everyone, Kristina Werner here. Welcome to another video for SimonsStamp.com. Today I'm going to be using this stamp set called Vintage Garden, which is included in the August 2022 card kit. So I'm going to be creating 3 cards in this video, and they all include some Distress Oxide ink blending. For this very first ink blending piece, I'm cutting my cardstock down to 3.5 inches by 5.5 inches, and I'm going to be blending 2 colors of Distress ink. I'm starting with Evergreen BOUGH. It's a nice, soft, muted, kind of a unsaturated green. It's really, really pretty. It's kind of a moody green. I love it. And I'm using a mini round domed blending tool for this. I like to use this particular type of blending tool because it applies a lot of ink all at once. And I find when I'm blending 2 distress inks or even 3 distress inks together, the more ink I can get on my cardstock, the better. So my second color I'm using today is the brand new color from Holtz, and it's called Uncharted Mariner. It's a very, very beautiful, more like blue that's leaning towards teal. Very, very beautiful, and it's a great color that kind of fills in some of the gaps in that distress ink color line. So I'm blending these 2 together. I'm trying to get a lot of ink on there, and I'm mostly blending in a circular motion until I get here near the end when I start to go back and forth between the 2 colors. And I will eventually start just sweeping my blending tool across the paper here. And that sort of gives it more of an even blended look. You'll see here, right here at the end, I'm just going to start going back and forth, and it really evens out any of that circular blending. So you're going to see it right here. I'm going to just blend back and forth a little bit, going in a linear fashion instead of circular, and that just smooths everything out. So I'll set that aside, and then for my next blended card, I'm going to again use 2 colors, but this time I'm starting with Scattered Straw, and I'm going to bring this up like 3/4 of the way on this card front. This is actually the full card. I've just folded it in half, and I'm keeping it closed with a little bit of tape inside, and I've also covered the back in Post-it notes to make sure that the back stays nice and clean. That's just a tip that I actually got from Jennifer McGuire years and years and years ago. Just go ahead and put some masking paper or some Post-it notes on the back of your card fronts so that you can blend directly onto the card base. Works out great. So now I'm using Evergreen BOUGH, and where these 2 colors meet in the center, I'm going to get a nice green shade, kind of a more limey green. But because I'm using 2 more muted shades, Scattered Straw and Evergreen BOUGH, this green in the middle is not going to be super, super bright. This is much more of a subdued color palette while still using some brighter colors. I think it works well. And like I did on the last blended piece, I'm going back and forth between the 2 colors. So I started with that Scattered Straw, went to Evergreen BOUGH, and then went back to Scattered Straw. And Distress Oxide inks are great for this type of blending because you can walk the colors back if you need to. So I'm going to set this card aside, and for my third blending piece, I'm actually going to use a mask, a stencil mask from Simons Stamp. This is part of their Nested Circles mask set, or I think it's just circle masks. And I'm taping it down to my work surface here. I'm using the replacement mat for the Holtz glass media mat. It's the replacement nonstick surface, and it's great for blending. And I've just taped both my card base and the stencil down so that I can ink on some Scattered Straw. So now I have a nice solid yellow circle on my card, and I'm actually going to go ahead and finish up this card right now. I'm going to my MISTI, and I'm going to do some really simple stamping using this stamp set. I have this really beautiful greeting that just says thanks. I love this font. It's beautiful. And I'm using the transparency grid sheet from Simons Stamp to help me line it up perfectly on the front of my card. So I just picked that up at the door of my MISTI, peeled off that grid sheet, and now I can stamp. I'm using VersaFine Onyx Black ink. It's a nice, sharp, crisp black ink, and I'm stamping that directly down onto that yellow circle. This card is very, very simple. I'm going to do one more stamping. I'm going to put 2 stamps down though. And the first one is just these 3 stems of flowers. I'm going to put that on the door of my Misty, and then I'm going to use my transparency grid one more time while I line up the secondary line of text for my greeting that just says, "For being kind." So the full greeting says, "Thanks for being kind." And I'm going to stamp both of these together at the same time just for saving some time. And that is going to finish up the card. Super, super easy and quick. One layer card. I think it's rather elegant considering the images and the text, but it's kept very, very simple. So that's the first card completely finished. For my second card in this video, I'm going to go back to that first blended piece that I did, and I'm going to be stamping off the edge on all 4 sides. So I'm going to use the sticky mat for my Sweet Petunia and Misty, and I'm going to put my blended piece right in the center of that sticky mat. Then I'm going to take the flower images from the stamp set and I'm going to start arranging them going around all 4 sides and just kind of filling in those gaps and nestling them in right next to each other. And this works really, really well because they kind of have some pieces that are sticking out and you can nestle them into the other pieces on other images. So I picked those images up with the door of my Misty, and once again, I'm using that same black ink, which is VersaFine Onyx Black. If you're looking for a great black ink that you can use for almost every purpose, this is a great ink. It's waterproof, and it's a pigment ink, so it can be used in most every setting. The only time I wouldn't use this ink is if I was going to use alcohol markers. So I've stamped those 3 images, I've cleaned them off, and then I'm going to transfer them to the other side and just fill in those gaps. So I'm just rotating those stamps a little bit, making sure I have all those filled in. And the very center of this background will actually have a greeting on it. So I'm not worried if there's a little bit of a gap with all these flowers in the center because that will be covered up by my greeting. So I'm going to stamp that down, pressing each corner of that so that I get a really nice impression. And then I'm going to peel this off my sticky mat. I'm curving the sticky mat more than the paper, and that makes sure the paper doesn't get too warped. And then I'll set that aside to dry completely, and I'll come back to that in just a minute. For my third card, I'm going to do something similar to what I did with the previous one and have these large floral images nestle around the corners of my card front, but I'm only going to have them on the bottom and on the sides of the card. I'm going to leave the top really open and blank. So I'm going to use all 3 of the larger flower images, and they're at the bottom of the stamp set so you can see where they nestle all together. So the way these are arranged are actually what they look like on the stamp set. So it's really easy to know where you would position them on your card. So I'm using that same black ink. Like I said, it's a great ink for all-purpose things. And I'll just have those right up and over the edge of this card front. After I've stamped those 3 floral images, I'm then going to bring in the With Sympathy greeting and nestle that right there in the center. I think all the greetings from the stamp set would probably work well in that blank spot, but I really wanted to just make this a sympathy card because I call sympathy cards a sympathy card insurance, meaning if you have them made beforehand, you probably won't need one for a while. It's when you don't have any sympathy cards on hand, that's when you need them. So it's kind of an insurance policy. Same thing happens with Get Well cards, I think. All right, so we finished that third card. We're going to go back to the second card and work on the greeting for the area in the center. I've got some Hero Arts Pitch Black ink, or not ink, but cardstock. Hero Arts Pitch Black cardstock. And I prepped it with an anti-static powder tool and then stamped my greeting in Versamark ink. Versamark ink's a very sticky ink, so it's perfect for heat embossing. I've applied some gilded embossing powder from Brutus Monroe, and then I'm using a heat tool to heat up that powder until it's smooth and melted. And it has a nice metallic finish. I'm now using the Simon Says Stamp Nested Circles dies to cut out this greeting using my die cutting machine. So I'll run that through my die cutting machine, and then all I have to do is assemble my card. I have a 5x7 white card base here. By the way, all of the card bases, all the white cardstock I've used today is Neenah Classic Crest Solar White cardstock. For the card bases, it is 110 pounds. And for the ink blended piece that's in the center of this card, I used 80-pound cardstock. I used the little mini foam squares that come in the card kit for the back of this little circle greeting. And then I used my tweezers to place that over the center of my background. So those are the 3 cards that I've created using the stamp set that's in the August 2022 card kit. You can get the stamp set inside the card kit, or you can buy it separately. And there's also 2 different die sets for the stamp set. There's one that cuts out all the greetings, and there's another that cuts out all of the floral images. So you've got a lot of choices. Thanks so much for joining me today. I will see you guys in another video very soon.